everybody. Gene Jackson here with the Retro Wrestling live from the archive. We are coming to you live right here from the Retro Wrestling archive in beautiful Gadsden, Alabama. And we're getting ready to get the show started. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties here on StreamYard, which is why I don't do live shows very often. It seems like as of late, StreamYard is quite difficult to deal with. But we are trying to get some things going here to get our guest, Del Rios, the Spellbinder, here on the screen to talk to you and answer our questions. Let's see here. So bear with me here for just a moment. Let's see. All right. Yeah, this is why I went to strictly pre-recorded podcast, because StreamYard gives me fits half the time. But we are working on getting the Spellbinder on here, and he's going to answer your questions. I've got plenty of questions for him. We got some cool announcements and things to talk about some things he's got coming up. So we will get to that momentarily. But if anybody who's watching right now, if you've got any questions or anything you'd like to post in the comments, we can discuss that while we wait for StreamYard to work itself out, and we can get our guests on here and get this show rolling momentarily. Appreciate everybody's patience. So in the meantime, tonight at midnight, brand new episode of Dangerous Conversations drops. It's episode 46. It's Ask Doug and Tommy number 7, where Doug and Tommy answer your questions that you have sent in. Another fun episode. A lot of interesting things come out of that one. And a new episode of the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast, episode number 64, entitled Running with Scissors. And if you give that one a watch here on YouTube, you will see exactly why it's named that and why Jerry Lawler's holding a pair of scissors in the thumbnail. So that's a fun one. I've had a lot of good feedback on that one already. And I'm really excited about everybody hearing the latest episode of Dangerous Conversations. If you haven't heard last week's episode, where Doug went into great detail about his time in Japan and kind of what was involved in traveling over there, and a lot of the stories of different people he worked with. Hey, Brandon Wheeler's with her. What's up, Brandon? Hope you're feeling better, Gene. I'm getting there, man. I'm getting there. Not quite 100%, but I'm way better than I was this time last week. I can promise you that. I couldn't have been on here doing any kind of a show last week, much less a live one. But again, Brandon, appreciate it, man. Brandon's always showing up for us, and great to have you on board. And hopefully we'll have the Spellbinder on here in just a few moments, Brandon. Again, StreamYard gets us again. Let's see. Good to be a part of the show this evening from New York City. All right, Luis, here once again to see the Spellbinder. Well, that's awesome, man. He'll be on here shortly. And if you got any questions for him, he'll be more than happy to answer them. Like I say, we've got a couple announcements about some cool things that Dale's got coming up. And I can't wait for him to tell you all about them here on the show. So we'll be rolling. But hey, you're up in his neck of the woods there, New York City. Everybody knows that's where Dale's originally from. Of course, he came down south and found a home in the heartland of the USWA. Raleigh Welburn says, look forward to the new episode of Dangerous Conversations. Love to tell Doug someday how Eddie Gilbert saved my life. I was a 2-year-old at a show that a pot of hot coffee fell on me in the concession stand. Oh, wow. Yeah, man, I'm sure Doug would love to hear that story. That's wild. All right, let's see here. This is what happened last time. I don't know. It's trying to pull Dell up on the screen. I don't know. We're having difficulties here. And bear with me just a moment. Yeah, this is great live action here, watching me text the guest. But we're trying to get this going for you folks. Bear with me. I don't know what's going on, but as you can see, StreamYard is having trouble loading up the screen here. So, see what we can do here. See if we can bear with me just a moment, folks. We're gonna do something here. All right. Well, that didn't help either. I don't know. All right, back to pre-recorded shows. It would say up here, folks. So we wanted to do a live one so that Dale could interact with everybody and you could ask him questions. And I thought we'd at least get going before it would decide to start acting up, but it hit us right out of the gate here. I'm at a loss. I don't know. We've been fighting this for 30 minutes before we had to go live. Don't really know if we're going to be able to rectify this or not. If we can't get this figured out, folks, we will. I will record an interview with Dale. We'll actually give everybody an opportunity to send in questions through email or private message on Facebook, and I'll record an interview with Dale in the next few days. But we're gonna keep working with it here and see if we can't make something happen. But I'm not gonna take up too much of everybody's time if this isn't gonna pan out. So let's see. Well, the good news is though, I've only got about another month of dealing with StreamYard, and since they jacked their prices up and doubled their price since I last paid for my subscription, I'm going to be moving over to Restream very soon. You know, I hear that they're a lot more stable connection and a lot more dependable. So we may be making that jump sooner rather than later. We may not wait all the way till the end of August. We may go ahead and do it soon. But I've already paid through August, so I thought, let's just bear with StreamYard while we can. But this is clearly not working out. Wait a minute. All right.
All right, I'm doing it with my phone now.
All right, well, that'll work.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Marshall's laptop. Should be. It might be the house though. Then you know what I mean.
You never can tell. I was talking the StreamYard program.
Yeah,
has its issues. I'm about to switch over to another software next month once my subscription with this is out. But hey, there he is, folks. There's our guest, Dale Rios, the Spellbinder. How you doing, Dale?
I'm doing great, bud. I'm doing great. Sorry about the delay. You know, that was beyond our control there.
It's the joys of doing something live. You know, that's the
thing.
Exactly. If we was pre-recorded, I'd edit all that out and nobody'd know. But
right, exactly. Yeah. And you know, I've tried with the computer a couple of times, the laptop, and now I'm figuring the phone be the easiest thing.
Hey, it's working, so let's roll with it. And you know, like I said, if anybody knows anything about the difficulties of doing things live, you have certainly done a lot of live TV in the wrestling field for quite some time. So
yeah, you figure 20 years of it.
Exactly. So it don't always go exactly the way you planned, but you got to make the most of it, right?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And that was the thing about USWA. You know, you couldn't call timeout or cut or anything like that while it was live TV.
That's right. You're in it, and you just got to make it work. And
that's it, yeah, there just wasn't room for any mistakes. You know what I mean? That was what made the business easier later, because you knew when you were out, live on TV, you had all those people watching. You couldn't, you couldn't screw it up. You couldn't mess it up. You should, that would have been trouble for you.
Yeah, the pressure was on because I mean, you know all the pre-tape stuff, just like the famous, the famous clip of Sid, when he thought they were doing a pre-tape and he started and stumbled on his words.
Yeah,
We start over, and Jim Ross was like, "We're live, pal," and
right, we're
it
live.
was kind of funny because Sid had been, so many years on USWA live, but he
Yeah.
was so used to so many pre-tapes on WWF, he just didn't think of it.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think that's when he was just went to WWF, correct?
Yes, sir. He had just returned.
Right, exactly. So yeah, that was. But I remember that was funny because he came to the back hysterical laughing himself.
I don't think a lot of people probably know and appreciate because they didn't get to see that side of him on camera. But from my understanding, and unfortunately, I never really got a chance to meet or be around Sid, but he was a guy who actually had a really good sense of humor and was a pretty fun-loving guy. I mean, you can't tell that from the guy you saw on TV, but you weren't supposed to.
No, he and the other thing was, Sid had to like you. If he didn't like you, you had trouble. But if he liked you and thought you were a good guy and got along with you, he was hilarious. You know what I mean? It was a ball to be around. He would, mess around in the back all the time, and he was really, really a good guy. God rest his soul. We lost him.
Yeah,
a bit too soon.
Absolutely, man, and that's a story that we have to tell over and over. So many of guys that that you worked with and spent a lot of time with and very close with. We lost way too soon, and it's just a sad fact of the business.
And I don't mean to interrupt you. Yesterday was 7 years that Brian passed away. Brian Christopher.
Yeah.
So,
man, I guess in some ways it seems, it's, you can believe it, but then again, I don't know, 7 years already, man. It don't seem like it's been that long.
Yeah. The whole thing was surreal to me for a while. You know what I mean? Every time I remember, waking up every morning saying, all right, that had to be, that was a dream, and
yeah,
of course it wasn't, it was just, I think I was talking to, it might have been Flash Flanagan or one of the guys at one of the appearances, and we were talking about a lot of the guys that we lost. I mean, we'd be here the whole show, naming Billy Joe Travis, Tracy Smothers. I mean, it just on and on and on. You know what I mean? Jeff Gaylord, just Buddy Wayne, Buddy Landell, all these guys, man. It's just a blessing to still be here, being able to talk about it.
Yeah, man. I guess it kind of makes you feel like you're one of the chosen ones to still be here, to get to tell you not only your story but tell their stories as well.
Right, exactly. And it was when you go back, that was a really special time, a golden era of wrestling, and I thank God every day that I was one of the last to be in that golden era. I remember being in the dressing room, and you got Rock and Roll Express, Bill Dundee, PG-13, Jeff Jarrett, of course Jerry Lawler, Brian Christopher, Doug Gilbert, Eddie Gilbert. I mean, just superstars like that. You know what I mean? Tremendous minds in the business. And then you had the other guys coming in, the older guys. Like Austin Idol and all those guys. And those are the guys that paved the way for a lot of us.
Absolutely. So we've got people watching us on YouTube. We got people watching on Facebook. So let's go now to Brandon Wheeler has a question.
Yeah.
Dale, he wants to know, Jonesboro always seems to come up in stories. Curious if Dale has any memories of Jonesboro or road trips to Jonesboro.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I remember we went there. Let's see. With USWA, we went there, and it was Brian Christopher and myself. No, excuse me. All right, Spellbinder and Jerry Lawler versus Brian Christopher and Jeff Jarrett was the main event at the Earl Bell Community Center. And it was probably one of my first main events. And of course, I was a heel, and like a packed house, sold out house. I remember the fire marshal coming in and saying they couldn't take any more people in, and the people are really upset, arguing and yelling and cussing out the door. But the Earl Bell Community Center, it was jam packed. Then I remember doing a WWF show at the college, which is not
Yeah.
far. College is maybe right up the block or something, maybe a mile up or something. But I remember that, and I went to that. We did that college. I did that college with WWF, and I did that college with USWA, and I did that college with Power Pro Wrestling, Randy Hale's Power Pro. We went up there, and every single time that place was jam packed. So Jonesboro was a great wrestling town.
Yeah, they ran it for years on Saturday nights, and
Yes, because I remember
I
one time. I remember one time we did TV Saturday morning, and believe it or not, so we had to do TV, stay in our outfits because Jerry Lawler had something at a car dealership right immediately after, and it wasn't everybody. So it was like me, I think it was Brian, Doug Gilbert. I don't think it was Eddie, but it was Doug. Yeah, it was it was Doug and Tommy, me and Brian, PG-13, and another tag team that it might have been the Moondogs,
all right.
and we went straight to the car dealership, and they had the ring set up right outside, and it was like 100 degrees. Hey, I remember taking my first bump, and I think I left my first layer of skin on the.
Oh gosh.
Yes, man, it was hot, and then you only had a few hours because the show. The car dealership show was 1 o'clock, about 1:30 maybe, and then you had the 7:30 bell time at Jonesboro, so you had about 2 hours to take a shower, get something to eat, and then get on to Jonesboro. So a lot of those days I remember. A lot of times we had to go to Jonesboro. It was a triple shot.
Wow. It's funny as you mentioned Earl Bell Community Center, and
Yes,
I'll never ever in my life hear somebody say Jonesboro without in my head hearing Corey Macklin going Earl Bell Community Center in Jonesboro down there. Because as every week it seemed like he was pushing it, so I just was etched in my
right.
brain
And
forever.
that was I tell you what, that why it was easy and it was fun because a lot of times USWA was there, and then the WWF would go like a few weeks later, or a month later, or vice versa. The
Yeah.
WWF would have a show there, and then here comes USWA or Power Pro a few weeks later. So a lot of times we were traveling about in the same direction.
They had a big convention there last summer, last June that I went to promote the USWA podcast. They had a really great turnout. It was at the Earl Bell Community Center, so I was like, wow, I've been hearing about this my entire life. So it was cool to finally get to go there and hang
Yeah,
out and see
I
everybody.
remember I was booked. I was booked at another show. That's why I couldn't make it there. But Jimmy Hart had called me and told me they were doing the. I'm not sure that it was matches though. It was just it was an autograph signing only. Correct?
They did that one. They did autograph signing in the afternoon and matches that evening. Now the
Okay.
month prior, they did a thing in Evansville for Lawler where it was just strictly signing. This one had a little
Okay.
bit. I think Jimmy was at both of them actually.
Yeah, Jimmy was at both. I couldn't make that one either. I remember getting a call to go to Evansville, but I can't remember. We couldn't get it worked out somehow. But yeah, that wasn't too far before that. I don't think so. I don't
Yeah, they
think.
were like a month apart or something. It wasn't
Right.
very like because I ended up making Jones. I wanted to go to Evansville, but I couldn't pull it off for work. I did make it to Jonesboro, so I was happy about
Right.
that.
Well, yeah, you got. If you're flying there, it's about an hour flight, but then it's the rent a car and all that stuff. And if you're driving, it's about a 4.5 5 hour drive. So
Yeah,
I just couldn't fit it in. So, it was something that came up where I just couldn't make it.
that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
Now on Facebook, Scotty Wentz asks, "What is your most memorable moment with Brian?"
Oh me, I was thinking about this the day yesterday, it had come up a lot, and don't get me wrong, I think about him. I think about a lot of experiences, a lot of guys while I'm driving. When I'm driving, maybe 25, 30 minutes to the gym and stuff like that. There's not a day that I don't think about him or one of the guys, but I remember Brian, at the end, Brian was getting a little sloppy at the end, man. And that hip hop drop that he did,
Yeah.
at the end, he was getting really sloppy. So we were wrestling. I was a heel, and he was a baby face, and we were working in St. Louis. And I said, all right, well, look, they wanted us to come up with our own finish, and we were doing business, and I said, hey, I will just give me your finish. You know what I mean? Give me your finish. And he goes, you sure? I said, yeah, man. I said, I don't care. But anyway, so he gave me the finish, and I thought he broke my chest cavity, man, because his whole torso fell on my chest. And I remember, oh my God. And he went, oh, you okay? And I said, no. You know what I mean? Anyway, I let him down. I got to the back and I threw my hands up. I said, bro, what are you doing? He just looked at me, like, man, I don't know. But here's what's going on with that. So the next week at TV, it was I was a babyface and he was a babyface, and we were tagging. And I said, well, no, you go ahead and take the finish. And I remember, I'll never forget it. He was wrestling. We were wrestling this guy from Nashville, Big Bully Douglas, and he was a real nice guy, and I like Bully, and he's actually a pastor of a church now. But
really,
yeah, he's a pastor of a church. But I remember him laying there, and I threw the guy, his partner, and I don't remember who that was, but I threw him out of the ring. Here comes Brian with the same hip hop finish. And he covers Bully Douglas's face. And I went, oh, my God. And then as Brian took his leg off him, Bully's nose exploded in blood.
Oh, my gosh.
Right. And I went, oh, my goodness. And, I mean, it was a mess of blood all over the place. And I told Brian, I looked at him and I go, hey, I said, you will never give me that finish ever for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? He just started laughing. I said, I don't care what happens. I said, I'm not never taking that finish again. But that's, when you mentioned about Brian, that's the first thing that came to my head, because I was thinking about it yesterday.
Yeah, it's kind of an unforgettable thing there, for sure.
He hurt me, and then he hurt Bully, and who else? I mean, he started hurting guys with that finish. You know what I mean? Other than that, he was fine, and that was later on, you know what I mean? I guess, his out of the ring deal was getting to him.
Yeah. And Brian got he got up high with that leg drop. And, and by that point, he was a bigger guy than he'd ever been. So I guess maybe it was a little harder to maneuver than it once did.
He wasn't fat either. He was a big, he was a big kid.
No, he just mass, know.
Exactly. And you're 100% right. So, a lot of times when you do a moonsault or you do a move like that off the top rope, you just go over and do the move. Well, he would jump straight up in the air and spring up, so he'd be up an extra 4 feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and down harder. So that's you got a good point there. That was probably why a lot of times you can't control yourself when you go up in the air.
No. Once you're up there, you're coming down somewhere, and unfortunately, it was you and Bully's face.
Somebody. Yeah, exactly.
Another viewer on YouTube, his screen name is I Am Not a Nugget, the Black Heart. Apparently, an Owen Hart fan. Nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
He says, "Hey, Spellbinder, good to see you again. Watched your podcast with Randy Hale sometimes back. That was a good one. I remember seeing that.
Thank you."
Dustin Burcham, a friend of mine, he's on YouTube as well, says, need to get y'all here in Missouri for a Show Me State Wrestling sometime. So
absolutely. know, I'm doing appearances and I'm wrestling and I'm ready. You know, I I'm still in 100% fantastic shape. As you know, that new action figure, Spellbinder action figure, is coming.
Yeah,
Really,
let's take a look at that. If you're watching us here on YouTube or Facebook,
yeah,
there's a shot.
yeah,
Rushfigures.com. You can still order this, and yeah, Dale looks just like that guy on the screen right now,
yeah,
and he's going to look totally like him because you got the outfit and the whole 9 yards coming, right?
right. And that's the original WWF outfit, that one that
Right.
they put on the action figure, and so yeah, I'm still doing it. So and anybody looking to get in contact with me, you can email me or get me on Facebook or get a hold of Gene somehow, and Gene will get a hold of me.
Yes, I will. If you can't get in touch with Dale, get in touch with me, and I will get you in touch with him. And besides that action figure, which is super cool,
Yeah,
Rush has got another Rush Mini Master Spellbinder that's available for a limited time. It's part of the San Diego Comic Con
yeah,
exclusive pre-order. Go to rushfigures.com right now if you want to order the Mini Master. And I've got one of those ordered, man. That's cool.
awesome, man. Well, the retro figure did so well on the pre-order. As a matter of fact, it sold out within a week. The pre-order, and he
Yeah.
said that it did so well that he had to take the pre-order down because he wouldn't have had enough for the certain toy stores that he's contracted to give a certain amount of
Mm.
figures to, and he said, you know what, let me come up with a mini master, and right now he says they're doing fantastic as well. You know what I mean? So I'm really excited, and I'm really glad for these figures. It's a different looking figure than any of the other ones for sure.
Absolutely. And some of the guys like Matt Cardona and Brian Myers, some of those guys that are wrestlers, but they're also big in like the action figure space. They've got this term, and I don't know if they might have made this term up. They say toyetic when a wrestler's character just kind of lends itself to a toy or an action figure where, it's like you was kind of an action figure to start with. And man, the Spellbinder character, this look right here, definitely fits that description of theirs for toyetic. You know what I mean? Like, this
That's,
doesn't look like just some dude here, I mean, this was made to be an action figure, so it's really
and
cool that you got
it's
this.
funny you said that, Gene. Back a number of years ago, I remember getting voicemails, and it was from different guys, and they say, man, we just saw you on TV, dude. You look like a superhero, like a comic book hero. And I would just, shrug my shoulders at it, like, okay, cool. I mean, but now that I look back, I'm a little bit older now, and now I look back and go, oh, I see what you're talking about. It's one thing when the young man or the kid sees a comic book where you can see the guy's shoulders and biceps and his chest and everything looks etched out. But Gene, you got to see the looks on the kids' faces when they look at me, and
Yeah,
whoa, that's a real life comic book right there. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
I appreciate it now. Back in the day, you're going a mile a minute, and it's not that you don't appreciate it. You just don't know how, because we're working every night. You know what I mean? You're
Yeah,
signing pictures, signing whatever, and it just becomes something that you do. You know what I mean? Then
yeah.
you get older, you look back and you go, oh, I see. Yeah, man, that's pretty cool. You know,
Yeah, and there's certain things that just, come with time and age where there's certain things you really just don't appreciate at a certain time in your life where you do have to have that reflection, that moment of, have some life experience to then go back and take a look. Go, oh man, I didn't appreciate what was going on then, or I didn't see myself in that light back then. But it's cool
right,
that,
right.
you can look back now and appreciate that, but still be able to do that, look that way, and be that guy, and
Well, and now I can appreciate the fact of how disciplined I was back then. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I didn't have a nightlife. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. And that's one of the things that kept, Brian and I. super tight. You know, we both went to the gym. We didn't go out and hang out, and not that we had anything against that. Whatever anybody else did was their business. But the same thing with Sid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We enjoyed riding because we didn't drink, we didn't smoke. You know what I mean? We ate, the best we could, and after the show, we were gonna go eat and go lay down because we need to wake up first thing in the morning and hit the gym. You know what I mean? And you can't hit the gym if you're out till 2:30 in the morning, 3 in the morning. You know what I mean? And
No, not at all.
and so I'm, thank God that I had that discipline to do it, and here I am still in 100% good shape. I feel great, and I'm still in the gym every morning, and still functioning, and not limping around, and that's just not going through, a lot of stuff like a lot of other guys do.
And I hope people can appreciate the amount of discipline that takes, because when you guys are spending all that time in a car going from town to town, and then you're taking bumps and you're barely getting enough rest to have that discipline to get up and go to the gym. Because guys that look like you and Sid and Brian, that don't just happen by accident. You don't just go to the gym once a week and
No,
and take some supplements and now you look that way. It's an everyday
and
regimen.
yeah, it's just, people, always ask me, man, how do you look like that? Man, I mean, it's just every single day, in and out and in and out. And, I mean, discipline is when you wake up in the morning and you go, oh, you know what? I don't feel like going to the gym, but you put your stuff on, you eat your first meal and you head to the gym. That's discipline, because anybody could say, nah, I'm not going on, roll over and go to bed. And unfortunately, a lot of times that's what happens to a lot of the guys, a lot
Yeah.
of everybody. They just don't have to do it. You know what I mean? But I'll let you guys in on a personal thing, and I don't feel it's that personal anymore. You know, Spellbinder or Fantasia wasn't known to be the greatest wrestler. You know what I mean? Yeah, I can do a 10-minute match, 15-minute, 20. I've done 25-minute matches, 30-minute matches. But what I was known for, of course, was my body, the character, the magic that I did and stuff, and all that made Spellbinder, what he is, or what people remember him as. Now as far, like again, I wasn't. I wasn't a fantastic chain wrestler, or nor did I really want to be honest with you, man. I thought the Spellbinder was just, he was a different character, a special character.
Yeah.
And as a babyface, I did it to entertain when I did the magic, and as a heel, I used the magic to cheat and beat everybody. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it worked out. Either way, it worked for me.
Yeah, it's always good when you have a character that's versatile as far as you can work it. If it's something that only works as a babyface or only works as a heel, it limits what you can do overall in your career. Because at some point, you're probably going to need to do both.
Right.
Especially in a territory like the USWA, and
Exactly, because they're going to put you, and that's any company, any company that has, that knows the business and knows what's working for them. They're going to put you in a position or in a spot that they need you in. You know what I mean? If they got 6 fantastic baby faces and 2 heels that are good, and the rest of them aren't that good, then they got to reach somewhere and say,
yeah,
okay, turn this guy, let's turn that guy. And, when they turned me, I was ready. I was ready because I was ready. I was itching to do it because at that point, Perry Saturn and I and John Cronus, which were the Eliminators,
hmm
were pretty tight. They were from Boston. I was from New York, and we were training in the gym together and stuff like that. And Burt Prentice was managing them. So when when Lola came to me and said, "Hey, I think we're gonna change you," I was 100%, down for it
Yeah.
right away. I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, let's do it." And then I was huge. I was 295 pounds. You know what I mean? So it's the Memphis wrestling, the Memphis psychology was, the baby face, need what do you call that? They feel sorry for him. They wanted to make the comeback.
Empathy. Yeah.
Yeah. So at 295 pounds, there wasn't a lot of heels bigger than me.
No, nobody was going to put you in enough peril to make somebody
Right.
scared for you or
Right.
feel sorry for you.
Exactly. And that's what that was that thing I was having. You know what I mean? I was like, well, wait a minute. You know, you know, I remember. Believe it or not, I remember working Jamie Dundee in a singles match, and here I am, 295, close to 300 pounds, and Jamie's weighing 125 pounds, getting heat on me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm like, oh, I told Jamie, man, you're gonna have to hit me with that hubcap at least 5, 6, 7, 8 times. You know what I mean? So and so, that was one of the things that had me going. And I said, so when they turned me heel, I was like, all right, now I'm going to have some fun because all the baby
Yeah.
faces were much smaller than me. You know what I mean? And I had a way with healing on the audience and getting on the people and stuff like that. And it was more fun for me.
Yeah, that's something I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand that psychology, but that's why, when Hulk Hogan was on top, you had your one man gangs and Andre the Giant and, Big
Right.
Boss Man. They had to bring all these monsters in to make it believable because he could have good matches with DiBiase, but you didn't really think that DiBiase was really,
No, was
putting
a,
him in
is
any
a
real
threat,
hard
right? He wasn't
times.
really a threat to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. It's what it's got at the end of the day. Look, psychology or not, it's got to be believable. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because if it's not believable, that's when they go, "Oh, this is fake" and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
and so Lawler was really, really. He put his foot down when it came down to uh, southern style, southern style wrestling, Memphis. I remember him having meetings and saying, "Hey, you guys, the camera. If we're doing TV and the camera's on you, lay the stuff in. If the other guy can't take it, then he don't need to be in the business." You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So he's because if he saw you throwing a punch that looked terrible or looked fake or everything, he'd be waiting for you by the curtain, by the gorilla, waiting. You didn't want to see him there when you came back from the match. You know what
He
I mean?
wasn't there for a high five, huh?
No, he wasn't there to keep coaching, boy. I seen him rip people. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
remember him ripping somebody so bad that he told him, "Don't even change. Leave in your car in your outfit." You know what I mean? He said, "Don't even change." And I mean,
Wow.
he was very protective over the business. But here's the thing: when I first came into Memphis, I signed with WWF, and they sent me here, to Memphis. And I say here, but I live in Oakland. But they sent me to Memphis to work the whole territory. And at that time, the people down here would say, and maybe you heard it too. They would say, "Well, the wrestling down here is real. That
Yeah.
stuff in WWF is fake."
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And then that was the whole thing. So when we got down here, and I was kind of, I was green. I remember Chris Michaels one time. He was tagging with another guy, and I can't remember. I can't remember what the names were, but we were at the Midsouth Coliseum. I was like opening match or second match at the time, and he was deeper into the card. But I remember coming back from the hallway or something, and I remember Chris Michaels coming back and he was bleeding from
Mm-hmm.
the forehead down, down his face. And I remember going, "Hey man, you okay?" You know what I'm saying? It was,
Yeah.
I was kind of a mark at the time. I was like, oh, that's when I started to realize, oh, wait a minute, this is why they're saying that. You know what I mean? The characters here were much more deliberate than the
Yeah.
characters in WF. You know what I mean? Like uh, Big Boss Man and Tatanka. Those, don't get me wrong. I still have people coming to me and saying that they wish that those gimmicks and those characters were still, in play right now. Right
Yeah.
now they say wrestling is just too boring. Everybody looks the same. They either got trunks on or they got long hair or stuff like that, and it's just changed a lot.
It really has. Here's a comment from a fellow wrestler there. John Saxon says, "Good to see Dale looking like $1,000,000. I was a non-drinking and non-party guy too." So,
John Saxon, that's my guy, man. I hope you're doing okay, man. John, I love you, and I remember one of the last times I saw you. It was man. We did a show in Gulfport, Mississippi, I think, and no, well, wait a minute. We did one in Gulfport, and then I saw you again in Missouri. We in Branson, Missouri. I saw you one last time, man, and it was great to see you, and it's great to hear from you right now, man. And thanks for the compliment, brother. Hope everything's going good with you.
good to hear from John.
Yeah,
And now here's I may butcher his name. Hopefully not. Luis Quinones. Is that how you pronounce that?
Luis Quinones. Quinones.
Quinones.
Yeah.
He says he is getting pretty good with these interviews. So happy for my brother-in-law. He is right about one thing: discipline is key. So that's
Yes. Yeah. And Louis is married to my sister.
oh, okay. So he literally is your brother-in-law. I didn't know if that
Yeah.
was just some people say that
He
kind of
lives
thing.
in New York City. He lives in New York City, and as a matter of fact, I will see him in September. I'm at the WrestleCon in Jersey, September 27th, I think, something like that. So
Okay.
I'll see you soon, Louis.
Thanks for joining us, man. We appreciate it. And John Saxon says much respect, sir. So
Appreciate that, my brother. Much respect to you too.
let's see here. Dustin Bertram on YouTube said, "Why didn't your TNA deal last longer?"
So TNA, I remember that. Here was what happened with TNA. I Brian came to me because him and Jeff Jarrett had an idea. That's when that's when Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Jarrett were the owners of TNA.
Right.
And so Brian came back to me and he goes, "Hey, Jeff wants to talk to you. About he wants you to come into TNA." I said, "Okay." He goes, "But he doesn't want you to do the Spellbinder thing." He said he wants you to do the Spellbinder thing later on. He has an idea because he wanted to bring Scott Steiner in, and
Mm-hmm.
so Brian came. Excuse me. So Brian told me call Jeff. So I called Jeff, and he spoke about me looking like Scott Steiner to come in looking like Scott Steiner. We were both about the same size. Um, the idea was I came in and I was coming in as Del Rios, but
Mm-hmm.
still with the Scott's kind of look. And I was gonna do 3, 4, 5, 6 pay-per-views, um, and maybe a couple of the USA. At that time they were on one of the networks, but they wanted me to do that, and they were gonna give me a slight push to get me up there, and then the real Scott Steiner was gonna come in, and of course it was the same deal like the old Undertaker with
Lee.
Brian Lee. Brian Lee did the Undertaker gimmick, and then then Mark came in as the real Undertaker, and before you know it, they had the big, blow up, Undertaker versus Undertaker. It was the same thing. It was
Yeah.
uh, I just went along with it. I was like, all right, I don't care. I'll do it for a few weeks, and he goes, and after that, let let Scotty come in. He put him over, and then we'll bring you back a Spellbinder. I was like, yeah, whatever. It's business. Yeah. We're working, and you're getting paid. So I did it a couple of times, and they were having trouble getting Scotty. I don't know what happened. No, what happened was Scott got hurt. Scott got hurt in Puerto Rico. Something about a collapsed lung or something. Oh. Yeah, he couldn't wrestle for a while. So I said, man, I said, never mind. I mean, I'm not staying like this. Keep dying.
Yeah, you do that for months.
Yeah. You know what I mean? I was like, no, man, I'm done, man. So, of course, I had to redo my hair back to normal and shave that whole thing off, and but it was fine. We were just doing business. I mean, it wasn't like I did nothing for free, so it didn't bother. But it just didn't work out. I remember Scott got hurt. He was in Puerto Rico, and something happened really bad. He was in the hospital for a long time, and he couldn't wrestle for a while. And that was right after he had the leg problem, the drop foot syndrome.
Yeah.
So he had just back to back, and I remember going, nah, I'm not staying with this, because I didn't think he'd be back for, 6, 7, 8 months. So I said, no, I'm not doing this no more. And that's what happened with TNA.
And I think when he was able to come back, I think he signed directly with Vince. I don't think he ever made it to TNA during that era. I don't think.
No, he did not. He went straight in that era. He went straight to Vince.
And no one can blame him for that. So
no, and I would, nobody was mad at him, because just doing business, and that's what happened with TNA. I did go back, and there was a couple of I did go back as myself, and I what's his name? They were doing something with La Parka, believe it or not, and I had to put La Parka's outfit on to be La Parka for about 3, 4, 5 shows.
Oh wow!
You know what I mean? Which people were like looking at me going, dude, they're not gonna believe that you're La Parka. It's about to bust off of you the outfit. You know what I mean? And I did. I looked like, And then who was it? It was one of the guys that came over to me and goes, man, La Parka wish he looked like that. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
It was just hilarious. But I was having fun, you know what I mean, and getting a check. So it didn't matter to me. Work was work. You know what I mean? So, and then that's when they got the people from Texas and the young lady that started running it.
Yeah.
And then it started to be a mess, and I started getting bookings everywhere else, and everything we're cool and everything. Just I went off, and I just had so much work back then that it didn't matter to me who I worked with or where. You know what I mean? I was just showing up wherever I was booked, and that was it. But that's what happened with TNA. I think TNA doesn't New York own them now?
They're working with them. It's they must have something invested in it besides they're not just. Yeah. I don't think they're just partners, because I mean there's a lot of crossover now, and there's WWE guys winning TNA titles and TNA World Champions coming out in the Royal Rumble, so they've got more invested than just a handshake deal. I'm
right,
sure.
Exactly. That's what I thought. I figured, and that's what they did with WCW. They New York wants to monopolize everything. You know what I mean? That's what they want to do, and hopefully AEW can just stand their ground and do whatever, because the it's just like boxing. You got Top Rank, and you have Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy. Then you got Premier Boxing Champions. They're all competing, so boxing's really hot.
Yeah.
So if you got, let's say, WWE, and then you got AEW, and then if TNA was their own, and then you had another company, That'd be hot because it's competing. It gets kind of boring when you buy somebody out, because I know they bought AAA.
Yeah, they certainly did.
You know what I mean?
Um,
So
I don't know, like, when they bought out WCW and ECW, I don't think that was great for the business as a whole.
no, it's
And
horrible.
I don't. You think they kind of learned their lesson from that, but at the end of the day, they want to be able to monopolize everything. Whether it's
Exactly.
good for the rest of the business, I guess,
Well,
doesn't
and then
concern them.
Back then, Vince took pleasure in buying it because he wanted to fire the guys that had left him.
Yeah,
That was the whole thing with that. And so he ended up taking a few of the guys, and then he ended up, either beating the guys that left him to go the other place, or he just said, "No, you guys are fired." He was shooting that day. That he was in the middle of the ring, and he mentioned all these names, and he goes, "By the way, you're fired." That was a shoot. That wasn't
yeah,
he. That wasn't no. He wasn't just playing
yeah. He
around.
took the shot at Jeff.
Major shot, Jeff.
I think he took the hardest shot actually of
I,
anybody.
I he did too, but Jeff. Jeff, from what I remember, Jeff put it to him.
Oh, he went out with a bang. Yeah,
Yeah,
give me the rest. Give me the rest of the money you owe me, or I'm not putting over China tonight, and you're on pay per view. And
and he did it before. I mean, we were at the Nashville. We were in Nashville. It was in your house pay-per-view, and he was. I don't know what happened. If he was supposed to, or he just did, but he dropped the Intercontinental belt to Shawn Michaels
yeah,
that day, and I remember him. I was dressed because I was ready to go out. Maybe I had just got back. No, I was before him, but I remember him. He was still in his outfit, and he had two bags, and he was walking out to the car. And I looked at him, and he turned around and gave me a wink, like "I'll see you soon." And then I found out that was his last day. He left.
yeah. Him and Brian both walked out.
Yeah,
Not Brian Lawler, but Brian Christopher. I mean, Brian Christopher. Brian Armstrong. Jesse James Armstrong.
right. That's right. Yeah, because Brian showed up the following Saturday at USWA.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's and I don't remember exactly what happened, to be honest with you. So I didn't want to say, but Brian Road Dogg left out of being loyal to Jeff. He wasn't
yeah.
getting fired. They didn't want to leave. They didn't want him to leave. But out of being loyal to Jeff, he went with him. He left. He quit, both of them.
It was a bold move, but that's a whole nother podcast. We'll jump over
Right.
here.
So
My buddy Justin Cook has a question.
yeah,
How was working at the Midsouth Coliseum? It was always a dream of mine, but doesn't look like I will ever get to achieve it.
man, the Midsouth Coliseum was insane. It was. I remember the first. Okay, so I remember the first time I worked there, and I believe it or not, I was the baby face, and I had to wrestle Jamie Dundee with Wolfie D at the side, so it was easier because they were cheating, and of course, I went over, but and won the match and got a good pop, and I did some magic and stuff, and I thought to myself, wow, so this is the Mid-South Coliseum. Well, I remember later on doing Madison Square Garden in New York City, and Mid-South Coliseum was like a mini Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where Madison Square Garden held about 20-something thousand, Mid-South only held about 10,000.
Yeah.
But every Monday that place was jam packed, man. There was a lot of loyal, people that have been going for years and years and years. I remember even guys like Bam Bam Bigelow. I remember we were doing the show at the Mid South, and we were there about an hour earlier. And he came out to take it in, to absorb and
Mm.
look around, the Midsouth Coliseum. Wow. Because it was historic.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Being from New York, did you have kind of an inkling of the history behind that building, or is it something you kind of learned as you went along?
Right. When I got here, when I got to Memphis, because I didn't know anything about the Midsouth Coliseum or the tradition. It I started to understand it and totally respect it. As the weeks went by, and I
Right.
saw people that were there, and I started realizing, wow, these people come every Saturday, every Monday. You know what I mean? Every Monday, and to this day, people talk about it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Uh, all they talk about it all the time. How the place was magical on Monday night, no matter what happened. The same thing with TV Saturday. Memphis wouldn't get going till Saturday at 11:30 because from 10 to 11:30,
That's
everybody
verb.
everybody was sitting down watching USWA wrestling. Then the city would get going at 11:30.
So speaking of that, and I've talked to a couple different people about their take on this, but when you get down, we talked about, and I don't know if I really talked about this part, but I know we talked about in the first interview about them sending you down to Memphis, from the WWF.
Yeah.
What was your first impression when you walked into the TV5 studio for the first time? Were you like, "What is this?" Or
Yeah. I kind of said, okay, wait a minute. Because you got to remember that my first my first professional wrestling match was a tryout at Monday Night Raw.
right?
You know what I mean? So, we it was at the Manhattan Center in New York City on 34th Street and between 8th and 9th Avenue. And that was a big venue. And I remember, going in through the back, and there was, a lot of dressing rooms. Um, then there was like a long corridor, make a left, and everything was there was the curtain and the gorilla position, J.J. Dillon, and all the other guys were. And so when I got to TV, you walked into the like it was like like a cafeteria room and
right.
dressing room. You know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
place, and I mean I remember sitting down and going, hey, and Jamie Dundee, the PG-13s, and Bill Dundee, and Lawler dressed up in the front, and
Yeah.
I remember going, all right, I'm gonna get this corner over here, and then I gotta go put my face paint on. I gotta go find a mirror to put, So it was like, but it was like a third of what I had experienced before, or at the Manhattan Center, and I remember thinking to myself, I says, all right, well, I'll probably only be here a really short time, and
Yeah.
of course the short time turned into a very, very long time, which,
And you're in some ways you're still there.
yes, exactly. And you know what? It's funny the way things work, man. I enjoyed it more, the guys and the TV5, the tradition grows on you, you
yeah.
know, the tradition really grows on you because the, uh, the base was really, really, they were very loyal. You had the people that knew who you were and came to see you and stuff. And that's not just Memphis. It was Louisville, Evansville, Arkansas, you name it,
Yeah.
cities everywhere, And then they had it's funny because I remember taking a plane and somebody on the plane recognized me and he said he was from Virginia. And so what I found out was the USWA had syndicated the show all over the United States.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
that was impressive, and that's the difference. the way Memphis wrestling was, back then. It was just some really good minds putting putting the putting the show together, booking the show. You know what I mean? Telling the boys what they want and what they need and stuff. And that's what I mean when I say that it's taken a different turn. It's just not
Yeah.
it's not 100%. The way it used to be. Uh, I've watched the video recently where I can't remember who it was. I don't even know the person, but they were on the Memphis wrestling show, this new one that's out now, and it was a real fast clip. But I remember them saying, "Okay, so this is Memphis wrestling," and I remember in my mind saying, "No, it's not." You know what I mean? No, no. You know what I mean? You had to have been at the TV5 studio to know what Memphis wrestling was, or at the Midsouth Coliseum, or any place where the last crew of USWA guys was. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That was Memphis wrestling. I don't know what's going on now, to be honest with you.
Well, we'll move past that right now. Our buddy Bo James says, "Hello, gentlemen. I hope both of you are well. I'm sure you're familiar with Bo. I know you've at least probably worked in Power Pro together some, and I'm sure other places over the years. Bo,
Yeah, I remember Bo. He was from East Tennessee.
yes,
Like,
sir, the king of Kingsport, Tennessee, as a matter of fact.
right, exactly. I remember Bo. Hope Bo's doing great, man. He was a really good guy. I never worked him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I remember him being in the dressing room. And he was a really good guy. I'm glad he said hello.
Yeah, Bo's got a great podcast, Outlaws to Independence, where they tell a lot of wrestling history. If you're interested in the history of independent wrestling and outlaw wrestling, especially wrestling in East Tennessee, but all across the country, definitely check out his podcast. It's a really good one, and Bo is a great historian who's helping keep the past alive, and I
Man, that's
appreciate
awesome.
that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And John Mayor McCall says, "Much love, Gene. Huge honor to have Dale on Wrestling Talk with Mayor McCall. I know that's a show that you did with him a while back."
Oh yes, 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 yes. He's a good guy. Good guy. We had a really good time talking about Memphis wrestling and Brian and all the other guys.
Yep, yep. Mayor is a super fan of Memphis wrestling and has a great podcast where he interviews the who's who of professional wrestling, past and present. So check that out as well. Dustin Burcham, who we heard from earlier, asks an interesting question.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider magic full time if wrestling didn't pan out?
Well, what a lot of people don't know was that's what I did. I was a magician when I was younger. I did, as a matter of fact, I competed for the gold medal every year. Magicians from all over the world go to this particular competition to compete, and they perform magic, and you get first, second, and third. And I competed at the IBM gold medal. I came in second place, and my dream was to become a master at sleight of hand and do magic and stuff. But at the same time, I was always an athlete, and I was always wanting to work out and being in best shape and stuff. And that's when I kind of said, wait a minute, um, this can work because I can probably do it all of it at one time. I can do
Yeah.
magic and I can still work out and look great and perform because I love performing. And it was perfect for the time that the gimmicks were out, the characters, Doink the Clown and uh, all the other guys that were
Yeah.
doing stuff, and that's where Spellbinder was coming in, which was I thought was perfect for that era, for that time, and um And so a lot of thought didn't have to go into it. You know what I mean? Because I was already doing magic, so it was easy. That's why I'm able to do the Spellbinder character. I don't know if you guys know, but I had gotten a couple of emails one time. One of the guys was from New Orleans, and I can't remember his name, but he thought it was funny that somebody tried to someone was trying to do a magic gimmick, and they kind of tried to paint their face like me, but he looked, so they sent me the video, and he looked like he weighed 150 pounds. And I just thought it was funny. I just chuckled at it. He wasn't as visual. He didn't, he was trying to, he was, and imitation is a great form of flattery. So I was flattered, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it takes, my mind, because I knew magic, and because I performed magic, I knew what the audience can see and not see. This guy, the young man was doing like little coin tricks in the middle of the ring, and so people couldn't see that. And he didn't know people couldn't see that.
Yeah.
It just wasn't visual, so that's the thing. But as far as being a magician, no, I didn't consider it after I got the idea to do the wrestling. I didn't want, it was just, a lot of times you have to build your, like about the time I spent in wrestling, you would have to be that much time in magic to be able to make a living with it.
Yeah. Well, I've corrected a couple people over the years. I've had, discussions with them, and they would say, yeah, I like Spellbinder because he was a wrestler that did a magician gimmick. And I'm like, no, he was a magician that became a wrestler. Like
Right.
the magic came first,
Exactly. The magic came first. You're 100% right.
And I'm assuming with that kid you were talking about, he's a guy who wanted to be a wrestler, and he's like, "Hey, I could steal the Spellbinder gimmick and do some magic," and then he starts trying to learn a couple of little tricks.
Right.
Very different.
Thought it was. I found it humorous. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Humorous because this was a few years ago, and I've never heard from the kid again. I never seen the kid again or whatever, and hopefully he found his own niche that he can do. You know what I mean? People probably told him, dude.
yeah. If he had any true friends, somebody pulled him aside and was like, "This ain't it, man.
Yeah, right.
Let's not do this."
Del Rios is Del Rios. You're not gonna do. You can't take what that guy did. It's a totally different thing. You know what I mean? So, but I get it, man. You know what I mean? That was like a lot of guys. I remember, in a lot of the independents, they wanted to be the ultimate warrior. You know what I mean? They called themselves all kinds of different names.
Yeah.
Little Warrior, something. Not it wasn't Ultimate Warrior. It was something then Warrior. They call themselves that. You know what I mean? So I totally get it.
So we're running low on time, and we'll probably talk some more in the future.
Sure.
We got plenty of stuff to talk about, but there's a couple things I want to get in before we go.
Yeah.
So when I was doing research for these interviews originally, I come across a list of different names you had used. So I want to kind of go down this list and just kind of give me your thoughts on some of these different personas you've had over the years. Obviously, we start with the Spellbinder,
right?
And then
the Spellbinder was my idea. The Spellbinder was my idea. Everything, the whole character, you know what I mean, was taken. The Spellbinder was my name, but the character was a friend of mine who was a professional magician. His name is Jeff McBride, and he did a mime gimmick. He was a mime, and he did magic. And I remember running into him on 52nd Street and 8th Avenue in New York and said, "Hey, this guy was really built up, and he hadn't seen me in a few years." And he goes, "Holy cow, dude, you're huge." I said, "Yeah, well, listen, I'm about to sign with WWF. Oh, wow." And I said, "Yeah, but look, I'm doing a different type of character. I'm doing a magic character, and I kind of emulated your look, And he went, "Oh, I don't care. You know what I mean? You're going into a whole different a whole different type of thing. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a wrestler, and Jeff's very well off, and he has a school of magic in Las Vegas, and
Nice.
he was my teacher and mentor. You know what I mean? So I gave him much respect, and I told him the truth. And Spellbinder. Um, what was the other names?
So, all right. So, when you went to the WWE, you got called up to the WWF. Now,
Yeah,
this is a story that you've told me off the air that I
yeah,
thought was fun that I wanted to bring
okay,
up here.
yeah.
You end up landing on Fantasio on
Yeah,
television,
because Vince didn't want to call me Spellbinder because it was my property.
right? Because he wants
I
to own it.
trademarked it. I trademarked Spellbinder, and he wanted everything to be his always. So I told him, I said, hey, I said, if you need me to sign something saying that you're going to, borrow,
Yeah.
the Spellbinder, not a problem. And then he didn't, but one of the agents got back to me and said, no, we're going to use another name. And I remember in New York there was a magician from Switzerland called Fantasio, and he spelled it with an Fantasio. And I said, well, what if we use Fantasio but PH like Phantom? And she says, yeah, that sounds good. I like that. And so he said, okay. He would rather listen. He would rather have used anything, but whatever, as long as it wasn't mine.
But now, before you land on Fantasio, as you was telling me, as you were on the road with the WWF off
Yeah,
the TV,
yeah,
we go through some names. One of those names being because I had found this. The reason we even had this conversation, I was like, "Hey, man, I've got to ask you about this." It says
yeah,
that what is this true? It says one of your past names was Magnificent Maurice, and you're like,
yeah.
"Oh yeah, let me tell you how that came about." So
So
share that with the listeners.
yeah, so that was that goofball Jack, Bruce Pritchard, who had nothing. The thing about Bruce was, all the boys came to me and said, hey, this guy's cool, this guy's cool, this guy's cool, this guy's a stooge, this guy's a stooge. And I'm sorry, but they, I guess pointed him out as a stooge. And so I didn't really pay any mind to him at all. And I guess he didn't like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I, I was never one to kiss up to anybody, not to Vince, not to Jerry Lawler, not to anybody. It didn't matter what it was, and I definitely wasn't going to kiss up to him. So I think he started ribbing me. I know it was him. He was ribbing me because every night they would come up with a different name. Hey Del, today we're going to call you Del Rios. Okay, I'm like okay, and one night he'd come up to me. I'll never forget it. I was wrestling Chris Candido. And he says, hey, Del, we're going to call you tonight Magnificent Maurice. And he was looking at me like to see if he got a response from
They want
me.
you to sell it, right?
Right. And I looked at him. I shrugged my shoulders. I said, okay. And I turned around and walked off. You know what I mean? And he just stood there. He's a clown. I haven't listened to him because I'm not going to waste my time. But he's still doing podcasts about me, from what I understand. You know what I mean? Saying
I've heard a couple
one
of those
time
clips.
I almost burnt down the gorilla or whatever, and that's just not true. I remember we were in St. Louis at the Keel Center. The place was jam packed. I was wrestling, God rest his soul, Rad Radford, and I was doing a fire thing. So I had what you call was a bottle of cold fire. It was liquid, and then I had a pair of white gloves on. So right before my music come on, I pour a little bit of this stuff, this cold fire, on both gloves, and then I had somebody waiting for me, so they lit a lighter, and all I had to do was touch the fire with my hands, and they would light on fire. Now, so I was doing it, and one of the stagehands, I told him, I said, "Listen, man, I'm gonna put this on my gloves, and I'm gonna give it to you. You should go ahead and put the top on, and, you know, we're done. He's like, okay. So boom, here we go. The music hits, boom, and listen, WWE, as soon as that music hits, at that time they wanted you out there. They didn't want to hear nothing. So boom, I hear the music, and then I was appearing in a puff of smoke. Poof. So I had to be there. So I had my hands on fire. I walked out. I heard, because I handed it over. They grabbed it. The stagehand grabbed it, and I guess he dropped it because I heard it. I heard the bottle hit the floor, but there was no fire or anything like that. I mean, so I don't know what he was talking about, you know. So, but it was just another thing for him to talk about or whatever, you know what I mean? And then he had another podcast where, you know, something about me or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what his deal is, and honestly, don't care. You know, I never answered to him for anything. I never would, and I know he's a jack, so I'm not worried about it. You know, but whatever floats his boat. You know, what he's got to be cool about is you never know when we'll run into each other, whether it's at the airport or, you know, a show, or backstage somewhere, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, just because talking like and saying stupid stuff like that is just not cool. You know what I mean? What I know for a fact, Bruce was a jack off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of the boys felt the same way. And I'm just being honest. You know,
There's a lot of them old guys from his era that talk pretty big on podcast, and then there are a few stories of some guys like that getting confronted, and they're like, "Oh, I was working, brother. You know, it's just for entertainment."
And that's exactly what, you know, and that's exactly what they do. You know what I mean? No, man, it's a work. It's a work. And see, that's their way out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then we're marks if we like play into it, you know. But
exactly.
he's the mark for having to talk about it. You know what I mean? Especially if it didn't happen, if it's not true. You know, can he talk about Dwayne or Mark or, you know, Sean or Jeff or you know what I mean? He had a lot more dealings with them than with me.
Yeah.
You know, so that's, you know, anyway, that's his deal. You know what I mean? That's just any of the other names. That's what it was. Every night, every night at a different show in WWF, WWE, I had a different name on the house show. Except when I think in it might have been it, but I think his wife had gotten sick, Bruce Pritchard, and he couldn't be on the road. And the agents were Jack Lanza and a couple of the other guys, and they were cool. And I was called Spellbinder in the house shows.
There you go.
You know what I mean? So yeah, and then that was later on. But then Bruce wasn't there for a while. I think he's back now.
Yeah, he's got his way back up to the top again. But
yeah, I think he's pretty high up there. Am I right? He's like
yeah.
Excuse me, he's underneath Paul, I guess.
Yeah, he's right there. They got this new show out where they're showing all the behind the scenes, and when they show Gorilla Position, he's right there, shoulder to shoulder with Paul Levesque. So
right, but you know, at the end of the day, for some reason he didn't care for me. He didn't like me, and I think it's because I didn't pay him any attention. I didn't talk to him or whatever. I remember I had we were at a TV taping, and I had a match against PJ. He was doing the Aldo Montoya gimmick from Brazilian Warlord or whatever. And they said, man, hey, they said, Dale, you be a heel tonight. And I said, okay. So, you know, PJ came up to me and was, man, what you want to do? I said, well, look, man, they want me to be a heel, so bump me around all over the place. I don't care. Hip toss, arm drag, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So I said, let's go, though. We got to go. Let them know that I can do. So, man, I bumped my living daylights out. I was so blown up after the first 4 or 5 minutes from bumping, but I just kept going. And we had about a 9-10 minute match, you know what I mean? And at the end, boom, he schoolboyed me somehow and then whatever. I had gotten some really good heat on him and stuff. People were with the match. I remember, and I remember going back up the ramp to the gorilla position. Jamie Dundee at that time they were doing the Nation of Domination gimmick and stuff,
Yeah.
and they were waiting for me by the gorilla, going, "Dude, we ain't never seen you bump like that. Oh my God, this and that." Um, they said that Arnold Skolin, one of the old agents, said, "Man, who's that big man over there?" Because I was still 290 pounds. They said,
Yeah.
"Man, who's that big dude bumping around like that?" And then so I'm walking in, like I said, the Nation of Domination, Ahmed Johnson, all them guys were like, "Dude, that was insane." This and that. So I was by the gorilla. Bruce Pritchard didn't see me, but Jerry Lawler was there, and he went, "What about that? Did you like that?" You know, because like King was happy. He was like, "Whoa,
Mhm.
what about that?" Like telling him, "Huh? You see how he works now?" And Bruce Pritchard goes, "Eh." You know, he goes, "Eh." And Jerry King stopped and looked at him. And he goes, "What do you mean? Ah, what that mean?" See, they didn't see me. I saw the whole thing, and then
Mm.
Bruce said, "Well, I mean, you know, it was good, but you know, he had something to say. You know, something
Yeah.
right." And when I came out through the side. He saw that I was coming out of the side, he like shut up and turned around, did something. So I saw him, and I thought, you know, all right, whatever. It is,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. So if that's, you know, see at that time too, somebody like Bruce can go to Vince or go to one of the guys booking everything and go, ah, no, we don't need to use him. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And that's quite okay. You know what I mean? I'm not sorry about anything that I did or anything that I said. And what I did was still enjoyable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I put it this way: I worked every day for 20 years almost, so it didn't matter to me. You know. So
Exactly. We're gonna take one more question from the audience, and then we're gonna have to wrap it up. But man, I'm gonna get you back on here again because I still want to
sure.
talk about Power Pro and Memphis Championship Wrestling. I want to hear about Gangster Big and
Oh yeah, man. Yeah,
uh,
that was real quick. We'll talk about that the next time. But that was they were gonna tag me up with Hughes, Curtis
oh
Hughes.
yeah.
They wanted to do that. And we'll talk about it on the next show.
Well, before we go, let's ask Azon White's question. He says, "How was having Reggie B. Fine for a manager in '94?"
That was man. That was real short. That was real short, but it was hysterical because Reggie's always been. Listen, Reggie's one of the only people that can have me blow up in laughter in the middle of the ring. You know, with some of the stuff he did and said. You know what I mean? It would, no matter how serious, no matter how serious I tried to be or whatever. He's just a. To this day, he's still a funny guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're lucky to still have him around, for sure.
Reggie's the same. So because I know a lot of people say, oh man, Reggie's so funny on TV. Like that's the guy you saw on TV. That's the same guy that you'd see in the dressing room or out
That's
on the street.
exactly
Like that
right,
is
man. That
Reggie.
wasn't a character, man. That was Reggie. That was it. That was who Reggie was, man. He didn't have to do nothing. He put his coat on, which he called Superfly, and just changed his whole character, dude. He was hilarious, man.
I love that guy. Me and him has been trying to get him on this show for a year, but he can't figure out StreamYard to save his life, and he wants to do Doug and Tommy's show, and we hadn't been able to get him on there. But I know you and him teamed up. Speaking of Doug and Tommy, you and Reggie teamed up against Doug and Tommy like at the Memphis State game earlier this same year, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They had the Memphis Legends at the Memphis Tigers game, and it was me and Reggie against Doug and Tommy, and we just had some fun in there.
Man,
You know,
that's USWA all the way right there, man.
right?
I
That
wish I
was
could have
real.
been there for that one. That was when I heard that was the match that went down. I was told Doug, I was like, oh man, I wish I could have made the trip. I couldn't get out of work that weekend because I almost went, but I couldn't pull it off. But
Oh wow.
uh,
Okay. Okay. And it's every year, so So who knows?
Yeah, maybe I can make it up there this year. But before we get out of here, folks, remember, uh, Dale has got the. You can order this right now. Go to rushfigures.com. You can get the Rush Mini Masters figure of Dale as the Spellbinder, and of course, the full size figure is coming out. It's the size of like the old Hasbro's. If you're a nerdy
Right.
wrestling figure collector like me and knows what that means. Again, that's rushfigures.com. There's a shot of how it looks in the package.
And there's two different versions. There's one with a top hat, and believe it or not, there's another one with the underwear.
Yes, that was the famous spot on
Right. That
TV.
we did with Tony DeVito.
Exactly. So you can get either version. Order them now. Be on the lookout because they're just about ready, right? You've been seeing some prototype pictures, and they've been kind of
Yes.
keeping you informed, right?
Yes, they're gonna the action figure looks insane, man. It looks like it looks like a comic character, and and that's why they took their time with it, because they want it to be exactly the way Spellbinder was. I don't know, Gene, if you saw what they did the caricature of the Spellbinder, and I mean it looked like
Yeah.
one of the Marvel comic guys, and that's what they wanted it to look like, and that's why I'm still really hard in the gym at it. You know what I mean? Because I don't want them to look at me and go, "What happened?"
You got to live up to that action figure now, man.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Well, Dale mentioned it earlier. I'll repeat it here. He's available for. He'll wrestle. He's public speaking, appearances, autograph signings. If you have an interest in bringing Dale to your event, you can reach out to him or you can reach out to me, genejackson95@gmail.com. I will put you in touch with Dale and we will make that happen. We will get the Spellbinder at your event as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look forward to hearing from everybody, Gene. And as always, man, I appreciate talking to you, and I have a blast anytime we're going over old history stuff.
Yes, sir, man. It's the pleasure's all mine. Appreciate your time and talk to you real soon, folks. Appreciate you joining us this week for the first live edition of the Retro Wrestling Podcast we've done in a long time. I know it started a little rocky, but once it smoothed out, it's been a great one. So maybe we'll do some more of these live ones pretty soon.
Absolutely. It'd be good.
See you soon, folks.
All right,
Thanks.
buddy.